The great ship of the Zelari Empire loomed over the barren planet below, its jagged silhouette blotting out the dying sun. From space, the world seemed fragile, a speck of dust beneath the shadow of a galaxy-spanning conqueror. On the bridge, the Zelari queen, Sithara, sat in her crystalline throne, her multiple eyes reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Her gaze was like a blade, sharp and unyielding, scanning every corner of her chamber. She was a ruler of fear and obedience, a legend among her people for centuries of dominance. Today, however, was different. Before her stood a human, small, seemingly fragile, yet radiating a confidence that none of her subjects had ever dared to display. Commander Elias Vance, prisoner of the Zelari, did not kneel. He did not even flinch. Instead, he smiled. A ripple of shock moved through the guards. They were trained to expect obedience. Hesitation was punishable by death. Yet here was a human, smiling calmly at the most powerful being in the sector. "Kneel, human," Sithara commanded, her voice echoing through the chamber like distant thunder. "Or you will die." Elia's smile did not falter. "I think I'll stand," he said quietly, his voice carrying a hint of amusement that only made the queen's eyes narrow further. The room was tense. The guards shifted uneasily, whispering to one another in a language that was harsh to the ear. Sithara's claws clicked against her throne as she leaned forward, her gaze drilling into Elia's. "Do you not understand the meaning of my command?" "I understand perfectly," Elias replied. "I also understand your weakness." "Arrogant human," she hissed, rising from her throne. Her armor shimmered with an energy field that crackled faintly in the dim light. "You will kneel or you will die." She raised her weapon, a long crystalline lance that pulsed with lethal energy. The hum of it filled the room. The human guards stiffened, preparing to strike. Elias, however, did not move. His calm, almost casual stance was unnerving. Sithara's eyes narrowed. She had ruled thousands of worlds, faced countless rebellions, yet never had she encountered a creature so small and defiant. She signaled to her guards, "Seize him." Immediately, 3 Zelari warriors lunged at him. Their movements were precise, deadly, honed over decades of conquest. But Elias was prepared. He twisted, sidestepping with uncanny agility, using the momentum of their attack to trip one and deflect another. The final guard lunged, and Elias caught his wrist mid-strike, flipping him over effortlessly. A ripple of disbelief moved through the chamber. Even the queen's closest advisors exchanged uneasy glances. No human had ever survived a direct encounter with the Zelari guards, much less fought back. Sithara's anger flared. "Enough," she commanded, her voice booming. "You will kneel." Elias held up a hand, his smile widening slightly. "I don't think so, not yet." The queen's attention snapped to him. He had said something most unexpected, a hint of threat, but not in the usual way. She gestured to her throne room attendants, who quickly closed in with restraining energy nets. Elias remained calm, waiting for the right moment. He had been captured during a scouting mission, but he had been trained for situations exactly like this. Every detail mattered: the positioning of the guards, the patterns of energy flow in the room, the timing of Sithara's commands. He had studied the throne chamber, memorized the positions of the walls, and even noted a small structural weakness near the ceiling that could be exploited. As the energy nets descended, he rolled under them, narrowly avoiding being trapped. Sparks flew when the nets made contact with the floor, and the queen's eyes widened in surprise. The human was faster than any of her guards had predicted. "You dare defy me," she growled, her multiple voices layering into a fearsome chorus. "Do you not understand what will happen if you continue?" Elias took a step forward, unafraid. "I understand perfectly, and I also understand that killing me here doesn't guarantee your control. Humans are clever." The queen's expression shifted. "Clever." Insignificant creatures like humans rarely survived beyond the outer colonies. They were not supposed to challenge the empire. And yet, here he was, unbroken, calm, and smiling. Sithara's advisors whispered urgently, suggesting traps, methods of coercion, anything to bend the human's will. But she ignored them, her attention locked entirely on Elias. She needed to see what made this human so different. Elias' mind raced. He had brought a small device with him, a compact energy disruptor designed to disable advanced technology temporarily. He had not used it yet. Timing was critical. The Queen's overconfidence was a weakness. Her guards were highly trained but predictable. If he could exploit one small pattern, he could create chaos. The Queen raised her lance again, signaling her intent to strike. The chamber hummed with lethal energy. Elias smiled. "Now," he whispered to himself. With a flick of his wrist, the disruptor activated. A pulse of energy radiated outward, and the lights in the throne room flickered. The Queen's energy shield wavered. Guards stumbled as their weapons temporarily failed, and a ripple of confusion spread through the chamber. For the first time, Sithara felt a flicker of uncertainty. Elias moved swiftly. He dodged and weaved through the disoriented guards, using their momentary paralysis to his advantage. He grabbed the nearest control panel, pressing a few hidden buttons he had memorized during his reconnaissance. Automated doors slammed, sealing some of the guards inside chambers, while others were forced back. The Queen roared in frustration. "Stop him," she commanded, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Elias turned and faced her, standing tall, unwavering. "You see," he said, still smiling, "being clever can save you even against someone like you." Sithara's anger was a storm. She had never been defied in such a way. Her throne room, once a place of absolute control, now felt vulnerable. She had underestimated the human, a mistake she would not soon forget. Elias used the moment to approach the Queen, not with weapons, but with confidence. Every step he took reminded the guards that their human prisoner was not just surviving, he was taking control of the situation. "You will kneel," Sithara said, her tone cold and threatening, "or you will die." Elias stopped a few meters away, meeting her gaze directly. "I don't kneel," he said simply, "not because I fear nothing, but because I know my value, and I know humans are not weak." The room fell silent. The guards hesitated, unsure of how to proceed. Even Sithara's advisors looked at one another nervously. The human had defied centuries of tradition in seconds, and the ripple effect was immediate. Doubt crept into the minds of those who had never questioned their queen. Sithara's energy lance glowed brighter, the hum of power filling the chamber. She stepped forward, her multiple eyes locked on Elias, searching for fear, for weakness. But there was none. Only confidence, only calm. "You are bold, human," she said, almost reluctantly. "Bold but foolish. Do you understand that foolishness will kill you?" "I understand," Elias replied, "but I also know that bravery and cleverness can change the outcome." The Queen considered this, and for the first time in centuries she felt something unfamiliar: hesitation. She had never faced a creature who could challenge her so directly, so openly. And yet here he was, standing tall, smiling, calm in the face of certain death. Elias' small disruptor blinked, ready for the next phase. He had only begun to play his hand. Sithara's moment of doubt was his opportunity, and he intended to use it fully. The throne room was no longer a place of absolute control. It had become a battlefield of wits, where intelligence and courage mattered more than raw power. The Queen's voice echoed, cold and commanding. "You have moments to kneel, human, make your choice." Elias looked at her, then at the room around him. The guards were recovering, the Queen's system stabilizing, but he had seen enough. His mind worked faster than theirs, analyzing, predicting, planning. "I choose not to kneel," he said. And with that simple choice, the balance shifted. The Queen, the guards, even the advisors understood that this human was unlike any other they had encountered. And somewhere deep inside, Sithara realized that her empire, vast and unchallenged for centuries, had just met a force it could not fully control. The chamber held its breath. The pulse of energy from the disruptor hummed faintly in the air. Elia's smile remained unshaken as the queen prepared for the next move. This was no longer just a command or a test, it was a challenge. And humans, it seemed, were full of surprises. The throne room was silent now, save for the faint hum of the energy systems. The queen studied the human in front of her, calculating, assessing, wondering how one small creature could cause such chaos. Elias, meanwhile, prepared himself for whatever came next. His defiance had survived the first test. But the real battle, the battle of wits, courage, and ingenuity, had only just begun. And somewhere in the vast corridors of the Zelari flagship, a single thought began to spread among the Queen's forces. Perhaps humans were not to be underestimated. The throne room was tense, electric with anticipation. Commander Elias Vance stood in the center, calm, collected, and still smiling despite the looming presence of Queen Sithara and her elite guards. The pulse of the energy disruptor he had activated earlier continued to hum faintly in his hand, a quiet reminder that humans were clever and unpredictable. Sithara's many eyes glimmered with fury. She had underestimated this human, and she could feel the ripple effect of that miscalculation spreading through her court. Her authority, once absolute, now faced the unsettling possibility of challenge. She raised her crystalline lance, the weapon glowing with deadly energy. The guards tensed, ready to strike, but hesitated. They had trained for centuries to follow commands without question, yet the calm of the human made them uneasy. "You have moments, human," she hissed, her voices overlapping in a chorus that echoed through the chamber. "Kneel and perhaps I will spare you. Refuse and you will die." Elias held up the disruptor slightly, not threatening but signaling he had more tricks left. "I've never been one to kneel to anyone," he said calmly, "and I don't intend to start now." The queen's lips tightened. She had faced countless opponents, but none had the audacity to defy her so openly. Her first instinct was to strike, to end the defiance immediately. But something in Elias' stance made her pause. He was not merely defiant, he was prepared, intelligent, and aware. His calmness suggested a plan, one she could not yet perceive. Sithara's attention shifted to her guards. "Contain him," she ordered, the energy in her lance intensifying. 3 elite Zelari guards moved forward in a synchronized assault, their weapons crackling with lethal force. Elias watched, analyzing. Their speed was impressive but predictable. He waited for the right moment. As the first guard lunged, he sidestepped smoothly, tripping the guard and using the momentum to spin behind him. A precise push sent the second guard stumbling into a control panel, triggering an automated barrier that slammed shut between him and the queen. The third guard swung his weapon and Elias caught the strike mid-motion, twisting the arm and forcing the guard to the ground. Sithara's eyes narrowed in astonishment. Humans were supposed to be weak, fragile. Yet here he was, unarmed against 3 elite warriors, using their strength against them. "You are clever, human," she said, her tone edged with grudging respect. "But cleverness alone will not save you." Elias didn't reply immediately. Instead, he glanced around the throne room, noting the positions of energy conduits, control panels, and structural weaknesses. Every detail mattered. Every step could be used to turn the tide. He activated the disruptor again, a pulse spreading outward. The energy barriers flickered and guards, weapons powered down for a brief moment. Chaos rippled through the room, and Sithara hissed in frustration. Taking advantage of the confusion, Elias moved closer to the queen. "I respect your power," he said, "but I also respect intelligence. Even the mightiest can fall when they underestimate their opponent." Sithara's eyes blazed. She had never faced an opponent who could neutralize her forces so quickly. Her energy lance crackled louder, and she unleashed a wave of energy across the room. Elias dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast, and rolled behind a console for cover. Sparks flew as the energy met the chamber walls, and several guards were thrown off balance. The Queen's advisors shouted commands, trying to regain control, but Elias had already begun manipulating the chamber's systems. He pressed buttons on consoles he had studied during his reconnaissance, triggering automated doors and barriers to seal off certain sections of the room. Guards who were moments ago confident and lethal were now trapped, struggling against mechanisms they had never seen before. Sithara's voice roared, "Stop him, now!" Elias emerged from behind the console, moving swiftly toward the Queen. He didn't raise a weapon, yet every step radiated confidence. "You see, your strength is impressive," he said, "but control isn't just about force. It's about thinking, adapting, surviving." The Queen narrowed her eyes. She realized something unsettling. The human wasn't just reacting. He was controlling the environment, turning the throne room itself into a tool. Her empire, built on obedience and fear, was facing a force it could not fully comprehend. Elias activated the disruptor again, this time focusing it toward the Queen's personal energy field. The field flickered, momentarily weakening her shield. Sithara's pulse quickened. She had never experienced such direct resistance, a human not only surviving but challenging her dominance with intelligence and courage. "You are bold, human," she said, almost grudgingly. "Perhaps too bold. Do you realize the danger you are in?" "I do," Elias replied, "and I also know that danger is part of survival. Humans have always faced impossible odds, and we adapt." He moved closer, using the disrupted systems to his advantage. The Queen raised her lance to strike, but the pulse of the disruptor caused her weapon to falter. Sparks danced along its crystalline surface, and the energy wave dissipated. The human stepped forward with steady confidence. Sithara's advisors were in panic. Her guards, elite warriors trained for centuries, were struggling against a single human who seemed to anticipate every move. Doubt began to ripple through the ranks. Authority that once felt absolute now seemed fragile. Elias spoke again, his voice calm but firm. "You rely on fear, you rely on obedience, but humans, we rely on intelligence, courage, and unpredictability, and that can be more powerful than anything you wield." Sithara's eyes flared with anger. She had underestimated humans, believing them insignificant. But this human had not only defied her, he had challenged her entire system. And for the first time, she felt a hesitation she had never known. Elias activated a final sequence on his device, sending a targeted pulse through the room. Doors slammed, energy fields fluctuated, and the guards' coordination collapsed completely. The Queen's throne, once the symbol of ultimate authority, now felt like a trap she could not control. "You are remarkable," Sithara admitted reluctantly, "but I am not yet defeated." "You may not be," Elias said, "but your perception of humans is changing, and that, I think, is enough for now." He lowered his disruptor, not as a surrender but as a statement. The Queen, still powerful, was now forced to recognize the human's value. She could no longer rely solely on fear and force. Intelligence, courage, and adaptability had shifted the balance. The chamber was silent, except for the hum of residual energy. Guards were regrouping, but the human remained in control. He had proven a single point: humans were not weak. They could think, adapt, and survive against overwhelming odds. Sithara studied him, her many eyes reflecting both admiration and frustration. The human had survived, outwitted, and challenged her in ways she had never anticipated. And yet he had not killed. He had not destroyed. He had simply shown her that humans could not be underestimated. "You have survived," she said finally, her voice softer, almost thoughtful. "And for that you live. But remember this, human, the galaxy is vast and not all will respect your kind as I do." Elias nodded. "I understand, but humans have always faced the unknown. We adapt, we survive, and sometimes we even teach the powerful a lesson." The Queen considered this. Her empire had faced rebellion before, but never from a creature so small, yet so cunning. She realized that survival in the galaxy required more than power. It required respect for those who could challenge it. Elias turned to leave, escorted by a small contingent of guards who now regarded him with awe rather than hostility. His mission had been reconnaissance, but it had become something more, a demonstration of human ingenuity and courage. As he stepped onto his ship, preparing to return to human space, he looked back at the Zelari flagship. The Queen watched him go, her expression unreadable. She had learned something important. Humans were not to be dismissed. They were unpredictable, clever, and resilient. And in a universe dominated by fear and obedience, that was a strength few could match. Elia's ship lifted off, leaving the Zelari flagship behind. Below, the planet awaited, a small world now aware that humans were far more dangerous and far more remarkable than anyone had imagined. And somewhere deep in the heart of the Empire, a single truth began to take root. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was clever, resilient, and fearless. Humanity could stand, even in the face of ultimate power, and smile. The galaxy had changed in a single encounter. One human had proven that courage, intelligence, and determination could shift the balance of power. And that lesson would echo across the stars, inspiring those who dared to challenge the impossible. Elias leaned back in his pilot's seat, allowing himself a quiet moment of satisfaction. The Queen had been a formidable opponent, yet he had survived. Humans had survived. And for the first time in centuries, an empire had seen the truth. Humans were not just another species. Humans were a force to be reckoned with. As the stars streaked past his viewport, Elias couldn't help but smile. The mission had been a success, yes, but it had been more than that. It had been a statement, a declaration to the galaxy. Humans would not kneel. Humans would not submit. Humans would endure, adapt, and rise above any challenge. The stars ahead were endless, full of unknown dangers and possibilities. But Elias felt ready. Humanity was ready. And in the vast, uncharted universe, that might be the most powerful thing of all.